Emma moved quietly through the expansive community center, her broom swishing rhythmically across the polished floor. The evening sun filtered softly through tall windows, casting long, warm shafts of light that illuminated the dust motes floating in the air. She was a small, fragile-looking woman in her late 60s, her silver hair pulled back neatly into a bun. Her faded work uniform hung loosely on her slender frame, and her tired eyes held a gentle kindness shaped by decades of quiet service. Emma had spent years cleaning these halls, unnoticed and unspoken about, an invisible thread woven into the fabric of the building's everyday life. Tonight, though, the atmosphere was different. The community center buzzed with excitement and nervous energy as the annual talent show rehearsals filled the main hall. Young singers practiced their scales, dancers stretched in corners, and local musicians tuned their instruments. Emma moved unobtrusively through the crowd, her broom the only thing separating her from the whirlwind of anticipation. The smell of popcorn lingered in the air, mingling with the echoes of laughter and applause, but Emma's presence barely registered to most. Claire, the event coordinator, stood near the stage, clipboard in hand and a sharp smile playing on her lips. She was a woman in her 30s, always impeccably dressed, radiating an air of confidence and authority. Claire's gaze swept over the room, settling on Emma as she tidied a stray chair at the edge of the hall. Her smile twisted into something colder, a spark of mischief glinting in her eyes. With an exaggerated chuckle, she approached Emma, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Well, Emma," Claire said loudly enough for a few heads to turn, "how about you show us a dance? Could be the funniest act of the night." The crowd stilled momentarily, a ripple of uneasy chuckles following. Emma's heart tensed, a mix of confusion and apprehension stirring within her as everyone's eyes shifted toward her. Claire's words echoed across the room, sharp and deliberate, breaking through the murmur of rehearsal chatter like a cold gust of wind. "How about you show us a dance? Could be the funniest act of the night," she repeated, voice laced with a cruel sort of amusement. A few of the performers nearby exchanged glances and smirked, their amusement unmistakable. The spotlight, uninvited and unwelcome, suddenly burned down on Emma. Emma felt the warmth drain from her cheeks, a sudden prickling sensation in her eyes as the unintended attention settled heavily upon her. She clutched her broom tighter, the worn handle digging into her palm as though it could somehow anchor her in place against the rising tide of humiliation. The bustling energy that had previously filled the room seemed to collapse around her, replaced by a hush punctuated by a few scattered snickers. I'm just cleaning, Claire," Emma replied softly, her voice barely above a whisper. She hoped her words would be enough to make the moment pass, that the crowd's gaze would shift away and leave her alone to finish her work in peace. Claire, however, was unyielding. "Oh, come on, Emma," she said with a smirk, crossing her arms. "Everyone loves a good joke. Why not give them a show? Surely there's a bit of fun left in you." Her tone was mocking, and the invitation wasn't really an invitation at all. It was a challenge, a clear demand meant to expose Emma's place in the social hierarchy of the room. The others around started laughing more openly now, some voices rising in teasing suggestion. "Yeah, Emma, show us what you got," one young man called out, biting his lip to keep from laughing outright. A few girls exchanged giggles, throwing glances that were anything but kind. Emma felt the pressure mounting, realized she had no natural exit from this cruel scene. An icy knot twisted in her stomach as the crowd's expectation weighed down on her like a physical force. She looked at the familiar broom in her hands, the symbol of her daily routine and the walls she had built to keep herself safe. Now, it felt like a cage. She opened her mouth to refuse more firmly, but Claire waved her off brusquely. "Enough with the no, Emma. This is going to be hilarious. So get on stage, or maybe we'll just drag you up there ourselves." A few of the more boisterous audience members cheered at the prospect, shouting encouragement that dripped with cruelty. Emma's mind raced, heart hammering in her chest. She felt like an animal trapped, the crowd's amusement the hunters surrounding her. At that moment, an older man nearby, Roger, a kindly custodian who worked in the same building, whispered, "Ignore them, Emma, you don't have to do this." His eyes met hers with genuine sympathy, a quiet offer of solidarity. But Emma knew the night was already unfolding in a way she couldn't contain. Reluctantly, her legs moved forward, trembling beneath her weight. Each step toward the stage felt infused with a mix of dread and secret defiance. The laughter grew louder around her, though a few voices kept to polite murmurs, revealing a divide in the crowd between cruelty and empathy. On the stage, Emma stood awkwardly, the harsh overhead lights casting sharp shadows on her delicate frame. A microphone was thrust in front of her, and Claire pointed at the space marked as the performance area. Emma's eyes scanned the room, hundreds of faces staring, expectant, amused, waiting for the old cleaner to fail. The first notes of music, an elegant classical piano piece, began to play. The unexpected choice earned a few puzzled whispers from the crowd, disrupting their cruel anticipation momentarily. Emma inhaled deeply, the notes washing over her like a long-forgotten memory stirring in her bones. She hesitated, the weight of the moment pressing upon her like a stone, but then something inside her shifted. The tight coil of shame began to unravel, replaced by a quiet, stubborn flame. Despite the laughter, the mocking glances, Emma was not going to break. Not this time. She raised one shaky arm, then the other, and slowly, deliberately, she started moving. Her feet traced soft patterns on the stage floor, graceful and measured. The awkwardness faded as each step found its purpose, her body remembering a forgotten language, fluid and expressive. Some in the crowd gasped, others fell silent. Those who had been quick to mock looked on with widening eyes, unable to reconcile the fragile figure before them with the images their minds had constructed. Emma wasn't the joke they expected, she was something far more. Despite the growing applause, Claire's expression hardened. She crossed her arms and bit her lip, the forced smile falling away to reveal a flicker of disbelief and grudging respect. Emma's dance was not just a display of skill, it was a declaration, a secret told through movement. She spun slowly, arms reaching out as if to embrace the entire room. Her face, lined with the quiet stories of a life lived in shadows, glowed with a rare, radiant confidence. The audience returned to their seats, eyes fixed on her every motion. Whispers shifted from cruel to admiring. Some swapped looks of astonishment, others nodded approvingly. Even the children who had been whispering behind their hands were too captivated to laugh. Claire, now visibly unsettled, made an effort to regain control. She clapped along half-heartedly but couldn't hide the faltering certainty that the narrative had changed. This woman she had intended to humiliate was rewriting the story right under her nose. By the time the final notes faded, the room erupted into a standing ovation. Emma bowed politely, her cheeks flushed not with embarrassment but with the glow of accomplishment. The crowd, once ready to jeer, now clapped and cheered her name. Emma stepped off the stage, a lightness in her step she hadn't felt for years. Roger approached, smiling broadly with genuine pride. "See? I told you," he said quietly. Nearby, a few other members of the audience exchanged glances, their earlier derision replaced by newfound respect. Claire's eyes flicked toward Emma and then away awkwardly. For a brief moment, all the confidence she had wielded like a weapon seemed to falter. Her role as the orchestrator of humiliation had backfired spectacularly. Between the applause and the surprised whispers, a lesson had been delivered without a single word: never underestimate the strength and hidden talents behind a quiet exterior. Emma's heart swelled, but beneath the joy lay a complex swirl of emotions: relief, pride, and a reluctant thrill alongside the undeniable sting that only some would admit their mistake. As the applause died down and the next act prepared to take the stage, Emma found herself surrounded by a crowd no longer mocking but curious, respectful. Her secret had been laid bare, and she was ready, at long last, to step into the light. What would you do if you found yourself in Emma's shoes? thrust into the spotlight unexpectedly, with all eyes weighing on you. The melody lingered softly in the air as the applause slowly faded, replaced by a reverent hush that seemed to flow naturally from the stunned crowd. Emma, still flushed with a sense of accomplishment, stepped off the stage, her hands trembling slightly but her spirit alight with a newfound quiet confidence. Yet, beyond the wave of admiration rolling through the room, there lingered a palpable tension. Claire's icy glare burned from the sidelines, a silent promise that this was far from over. As Emma made her way back to the edge of the hall, several people approached her with words of surprise and praise. "I never knew you danced like that," whispered Mrs. Thompson, a kindly woman who organized the knitting group that met every Thursday. Daniel, a high school senior who had initially been among those taunting Emma, now looked at her with fresh respect. "You were amazing," he admitted, almost sheepishly. Emma nodded quietly, feeling warmth spread in her chest. Her life had been a tapestry of quiet moments and everyday routine, but those minutes on stage had opened a door to something she thought was locked forever. Claire's colleague, Mark, the community center's youth coach, cleared his throat and approached Claire, who was still standing off to the side, arms crossed and lips pressed tight. "Maybe we underestimated her," Mark said cautiously, watching Emma with a mixture of admiration and surprise. Claire's jaw tightened, but she forced a smile. "Lucky fluke," she muttered under her breath, knowing full well that the crowd's reaction told a different story. Still, the moment demanded action. The talent show was far from over, and there was a final round scheduled with the best performers slated to appear. Claire approached the microphone, her face steady now as she prepared to address the audience. "Ladies and gentlemen," Claire began, voice carrying through the hall. "It appears that we had an unexpected highlight tonight. Emma, thank you for sharing your talent with us. Perhaps you have more to show in the finale?" The crowd erupted again, many calling out encouragement. Emma felt the weight of their expectations but also a steady surge of courage. She nodded hesitantly, not yet believing this was real but desperate to honor the moment. Later, backstage, as the rehearsal paused briefly, Emma caught her breath. The room smelled faintly of stage makeup and polished wood, and the buzz of conversations swirled around her. Roger found her and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "You showed them, Emma. You were brilliant," he said, eyes shining with honest pride. Emma exhaled slowly. "I never thought this would happen," she confessed. "Dancing was something I left behind long ago." Roger nodded knowingly. Sometimes the past waits for the right time to return. In the quiet of her small apartment that night, Emma sat by the window overlooking the streetlights, her thoughts racing. She remembered the long years she had spent as a young woman dreaming of ballet, the countless lessons she had taken in secret, the sacrifices made to care for family and keep the household running. Her simple uniform tonight had hidden scars of dreams deferred and a life carefully lived in shadows. The next day, whispers of Emma's performance spread quickly through the neighborhood. The community center was abuzz with excitement, conversations flipping from surprise to admiration. Some expressed regret for their earlier laughter, others marveled at her hidden depth. Among them, Claire processed a collision of embarrassment and grudging respect. She replayed the scene over and over, unable to dismiss Emma's elegance and strength. The narrative she had tried to script had unraveled spectacularly before a captivated audience, and now she was forced into a corner. The hours ticked by as rehearsals continued, and Emma's name was now on the program for the final show. Invitations arrived unexpectedly, local newspapers sought interviews, and even the community mayor expressed interest in acknowledging her courage and talent. Despite the growing attention, Emma remained humble. She agreed to a brief interview, sharing a glimpse of her story. "I was once a ballet dancer," she revealed softly. "I loved it with all my heart but had to stop when life demanded it. Tonight was a chance to remember and celebrate that part of me." Her words resonated, reaching beyond the community center's walls. Those who had dismissed her now found themselves reflecting on the assumptions made about people's talents, appearances, and stories hidden beneath the surface. Meanwhile, Claire grappled with her own emotions: envy, shame, a spark of admiration. In a moment of rare vulnerability, she confided in Mark, "I didn't expect her to be so talented. I thought it would be funny, but she shattered everything." Mark smiled gently. "Maybe it's time to rethink what we believe about people." The day of the final talent show arrived, and the community center brimmed with eager spectators, buzzing with anticipation. Emma's simple blue dress carried her quietly onto the stage once more, the spotlight bright but no longer daunting. This time, the applause was genuine, heartfelt, a chorus of acceptance and celebration. Her dance was a delicate homage to the dreams she carried silently for decades. Every movement told a story of lost time reclaimed, of resilience and grace. When the final note faded, the hall stood united in a thunderous standing ovation. Emma's eyes glistened with tears. She felt both seen and honored in a way she never had before. Claire watched from the wings, a conflicted expression shadowing her features. In that moment, she didn't just see Emma's talent, she saw her strength. A lesson learned not through words but through the undeniable power of Emma's performance. The community had witnessed more than a dance. They had glimpsed a life transformed, a soul reborn beneath their very eyes. Emma smiled, knowing this was just the beginning of a new chapter. Emma's performance that night had stirred more than just applause. It reopened conversations long buried beneath the surface of her humble appearance and quiet demeanor. In the days following the final show, the story of the old cleaner who danced like a star circulated not only within the walls of the community center but throughout the neighborhood. People stopped to greet Emma with smiles instead of polite nods, asking how she felt now that her secret had been revealed. And all the while, Emma met them with a calm grace that belied the whirlwind of emotions swirling inside her. The truth she shared, one she had scarcely voiced out loud before, was that she had once been a ballet dancer, trained and passionate, her life centered around the delicate discipline and beauty of the art. But life's unforgiving demands had pulled her away from the studio and out into the world of everyday survival. She married young, raised children, and put aside her own dreams to provide for family, always in the background, working, cleaning, supporting. The dancer's costume had long been replaced by her scrubbed uniform, slippers swapped for practical shoes, stages replaced by vinyl floors. Emma's soul, though, had never stopped moving. In those quiet moments when the world wasn't watching, she practiced steps and pirouettes in her small apartment, her body recalling the language long after the music had faded. "I danced when no one was looking," she admitted gently. "It was my secret joy, my quiet rebellion against the ordinary." This confession deepened the community's admiration. No longer was Emma just the janitor. They saw her as a woman who had lived fully and sacrificed silently, embodying a resilience that inspired many. She had become an emblem of perseverance, proving that age and circumstance do not define a person's worth or potential. Beyond that, Emma's story spoke to the heart of why she'd remained modest in appearance. On her way home from volunteer work at a local shelter earlier that week, she'd stopped by the community center to tidy up before the evening's excitement. She hadn't expected to be noticed, let alone mocked. The simple clothes were remnants of a life spent on the move, practical and unassuming, defenses against distraction and judgment. But those clothes never concealed the dancing light within her. Her neighbors, many of whom had come to know Emma over the years as a quiet presence in the neighborhood, now looked at her with fresh eyes. Children whispered excitedly, asking their parents if Emma was really a ballerina. At the local cafe, patrons nodded appreciatively when they saw her. The community began to rally around her, offering invitations to speak, to teach, to share her journey. For Emma, these invitations were new and fragile. She wondered if she was ready to step fully into this role people seemed eager to bestow upon her. Was she a dancer for the community now? Was this a second chance at a dream once thought abandoned? At night, she lay awake imagining dance studios instead of dim apartments, audiences instead of solitary reflections. Claire, watching from a distance, remained a complicated presence in Emma's life. There was no denying that the cruel attempt to humiliate Emma had backfired spectacularly, and Claire could feel her own role in that failure keenly. Yet she was not a woman without capacity for growth. In quieter moments, she found herself reflecting on what she'd learned, that appearances deceive, that kindness surpasses cruelty, and that she had misjudged the gentle woman she'd mocked so publicly. One afternoon, before a community board meeting, Claire approached Emma. Her usual sharp edges were softened, replaced by a tentative humility. "Emma," she said, voice careful, "I owe you an apology. What I said and did during the rehearsal wasn't right. You were brave up there, more than I could have ever imagined." Emma regarded her quietly for a moment, the years of hurt mingling briefly with the realization that Claire truly meant it. She nodded. "Thank you, Claire. It means a lot to hear that," Emma replied softly. "It's never too late for people to change." Their conversation marked a subtle turning point. Claire began to support the community center's efforts to highlight local talent genuinely, offering a more inclusive vision that went beyond surface judgments. It was still early days, but the shift was real. Meanwhile, Emma's life settled into a new rhythm. She balanced work with dance lessons she now embraced openly and taught small groups of enthusiastic children who had come to adore her, hungry to learn from someone who had lived so much as well as danced. She found herself invited to local events, asked to speak about resilience and quiet courage. At home, Emma's apartment filled with flowers and cards from neighbors and admirers alike. The walls, once bare and practical, now held framed photos of her performances and kind notes from community members. It wasn't the grand stage of her youth, but it was meaningful, a small gallery of victories and new possibilities. Despite the applause and new role, Emma remained grounded. She never forgot the quiet moments, the sacrifices that had shaped her, nor the woman she had been before the spotlight found her. Her dance was no longer just for herself, it was an invitation, a shared story of hope and strength. As autumn turned the leaves gold, Emma prepared for another community event, this time as a featured performer, no longer the joke or the overlooked cleaner but the star in her own right. In the quiet before the evening's rehearsal, she stood before a mirror, her reflection showing the blend of grace and experience that life had given her. The soft lines on her face held stories only she fully understood, and the sparkle in her eyes revealed a spirit unbroken and endlessly enduring. Emma smiled. The journey had been long, the struggle profound, but she was dancing forward now, not just on the stage but in life itself. And as the music began once more, she knew this was not the end, it was only the beginning. The crowd waited in anticipation, and the world was finally ready to see her shine. The weeks that followed Emma's triumphant return to the stage unfolded with a quiet intensity. The community center had transformed from a place of merely functional gathering into a hub of warmth, celebration, and possibility. Emma was no longer just the woman who cleaned its floors, she was a symbol of resilience, her story shared at every meeting and in every whispered conversation. Amid this transformation, Claire found herself face to face with unexpected consequences. The harsh laughter and teasing she had aimed at Emma during rehearsals had not gone unnoticed. The local newspaper, previously amused by the talent show's humor, published a piece highlighting the power of kindness and the cost of cruelty, featuring Emma's graceful victory and calling out Claire's initial mockery. The community's response was swift and clear. Claire's attitude was no longer welcome in her role as event coordinator. At the next board meeting, voices spoke out candidly. Several community members, including Roger and Mrs. Thompson, advocated on behalf of Emma and for a more respectful atmosphere in all future events. The board, spurred on by mounting support, asked Claire to step down from her coordinator position. Although a difficult moment for her, Claire accepted the decision with a quiet dignity. She reached out to Emma shortly thereafter. One crisp morning, Claire visited Emma's modest apartment. She brought no flowers or gifts, only a handwritten note and an apology. "Emma," Claire said, voice soft and sincere, "I wanted to say I'm sorry. I misjudged you, and I regret the pain my words caused. I understand now the strength it takes to carry yourself with such grace. If there's any way I can make amends, I'd like to try." Emma regarded Claire with a gentle nod. "Thank you for your honesty, Claire. Actions mean more than words, and I believe people can grow." That exchange marked a new chapter for both women. Claire, humbled, began volunteering with a local youth group, learning to nurture potential with encouragement instead of scorn. Emma, bolstered by forgiveness and her own courage, prepared for the season of performances lined up at the community center and beyond. Word of Emma's talent reached further than anyone had anticipated. Invitations trickled in, from arts festivals to charity events, enticing her to share her story and dance before larger audiences. Emma hesitated initially, mindful of the simple life she had cherished, but with encouragement from friends, she accepted. Her performances were met with glowing receptions. Audiences were captivated not only by the elegance of her movement but by the quiet strength she embodied. Emma became an informal mentor, inspiring those who feared their talents had faded or who felt invisible in their own worlds. The most meaningful moment came on an early spring evening during a gala fundraiser for the community center. Emma took the stage, the spotlight a gentle wash of gold, illuminating a room packed with familiar faces and new admirers alike. As the music swelled, she danced with the same fluid grace that had first astonished the crowd months before. But now, there was something more profound beneath her feet, a sense of belonging and the unmistakable thrill of reclaimed purpose. When the performance concluded, the hall erupted into heartfelt applause. Tears shone in Emma's eyes. This was no isolated victory, it was a testament to perseverance, to unexpected possibilities born from quiet courage. Backstage, Roger approached her, beaming. "You've changed this whole community, Emma. People see the heart behind the work now. You've given us all a lesson about dignity." Emma smiled, feeling the truth of his words deep within her. Her journey had been long and winding, but in this moment, she understood that every step, the hardship, the loneliness, and the courage to dance despite it all, had been worthwhile. Claire, seated among the audience that night, watched Emma with admiration mingled with regret for the past. She whispered a soft congratulations and resolved to be an ally rather than an obstacle in the stories of others. As the gala wound down and people trickled out into the cool night, Emma stood quietly near the exit. A group of young dancers approached her, eyes wide with admiration and hope. "You taught us it's never too late," one of them said. "Thank you." Emma ruffled the girl's hair gently. "Keep dancing, dreamers. Always keep dancing." The community, once quick to judge and slow to forgive, now embraced Emma as a cherished treasure. Her story was a reminder that hidden beneath ordinary surfaces lie extraordinary strengths, waiting for the right moment to shine. Reflecting on everything, Emma knew her life had been irrevocably altered, not by fame or accolades but by the recognition that her spirit had never needed to hide. She had found her voice not through anger or confrontation but through the grace of honest expression. It was a victory measured not just in applause but in quiet moments of self-respect and healing. As the night folded into early dawn, Emma felt a serene fulfillment wash over her. Her path had unfolded through struggle and kindness, both given and received. The woman who once swept floors unseen had danced her way into the hearts of many, proving that dignity and talent are never confined by age or circumstance. Now, she wondered aloud to herself and to those who had witnessed her journey, what would you have done, if you were in Emma's place, facing a room full of judgment and laughter yet choosing to reclaim your story with courage? How would you respond to those who doubted your worth? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your voice matters, just like Emma's. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe and join us for more heartfelt tales that celebrate the resilience of the human spirit. Until next time, take care, and remember to always dance to your own rhythm.